To keep seeing more stories, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. If you like this video, share your feedback in the comments section. The photograph. Olivia Bennet stared at her phone screen, her hands trembling as the reality of what she had just done crashed over her like a wave. The photograph was innocent enough, just her standing in the department store dressing room trying on a professional burgundy blazer for the upcoming quarterly meeting. She had meant to send it to her best friend Rachel for a second opinion, but in her distracted state, rushing between tasks during her lunch break, she had sent it to the last person who had messaged her that morning. Theodore Hayes. Her boss. The director of operations at Sterling Industries. Panic flooded through her veins as she watched the 2 blue checkmarks appear beneath the message. He had seen it. There was no taking it back now. Olivia pressed her back against the dressing room wall, her carefully maintained professional composure crumbling. In the 3 years she had worked as Theodore's executive assistant, she had never made such a careless mistake. She prided herself on being organized, efficient, and completely professional at all times. Her phone buzzed in her hand, and she nearly dropped it. Theodore Hayes. Olivia, are you all right? Is everything okay? She blinked at the message, confusion replacing some of her panic. That was not the response she had expected. No reprimand, no uncomfortable acknowledgement of the inappropriate accident, just concern. Olivia, I am so sorry, Mr. Hayes. That message was meant for someone else. Please disregard it. I apologize for the unprofessional error. She watched the 3 dots appear and disappear several times before his response came through. Theodore Hayes, no need to apologize. I'm just making sure you're safe. That dressing room looks different from your usual shopping locations. Olivia frowned at her reflection in the mirror. How would he know where she usually shopped? She had never discussed her personal shopping habits with him. Their relationship was strictly professional, built on efficiency reports, scheduling conflicts, and quarterly presentations. Theodore Hayes was a man who lived and breathed corporate success. At 42, he had built Sterling Industries' operations division into the most profitable department in the company. He was respected, feared by some, and completely dedicated to his work. She quickly changed back into her work clothes, abandoning the blazer purchase entirely. Her lunch break was nearly over, and she needed to get back to the office before this situation became even more awkward. As she rushed through the department store, her phone buzzed again. Theodore Hayes, when you return, please come directly to my office. The knot in Olivia's stomach tightened. She had been hoping to avoid any face-to-face discussion about the incident, maybe let it fade into forgotten embarrassment. Clearly, that was not going to happen. 40 minutes later, Olivia stood outside Theodore's office door, smoothing down her black pencil skirt and checking that her auburn hair was still neatly secured in its professional bun. She knocked twice, her usual signal, and entered when she heard his deep voice grant permission. Theodore Hayes stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, his hands clasped behind his back. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with dark hair that was beginning to show distinguished threads of silver at the temples. His charcoal suit was immaculate as always, tailored perfectly to his athletic frame. He turned as she entered, and Olivia was struck by something she had never noticed before in his steel-gray eyes. Genuine concern. Sit down, please, he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. Olivia sat, keeping her posture straight and her hands folded in her lap. Again, Mr. Hayes, I sincerely apologize for the inappropriate message. It was a careless mistake that will not happen again. Theodore moved to his desk but did not sit. Instead, he leaned against the edge, studying her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. Olivia, in the 3 years you've worked for me, you have never once made a careless mistake. Your attention to detail is impeccable. So when you send me a photograph from what appears to be a discount department store in a questionable part of town during your lunch break, acting completely out of character, I don't see carelessness. I see distraction. I see someone who might be dealing with something they're trying to hide. Olivia felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. I assure you, everything is fine. I was simply shopping and made an error with my contacts. The metadata on the photograph shows it was taken at the Westside Plaza. You live in the East End and work downtown. That's a 40-minute drive in the opposite direction. Theodore's voice was not accusatory, but there was a determination in it that Olivia recognized. It was the same tone he used when he was investigating a problem in the operations division, methodically gathering information until he understood every angle. How do you know where I live? The question escaped before she could stop it. I know all my key employees' addresses for emergency contact purposes. What I don't know is why my most reliable assistant would drive across the city during her lunch break to shop at a store she's never mentioned before. Olivia felt the walls closing in. She had been so careful for months, making sure no one at Sterling Industries knew about Derek, about the reasons she had started changing her routines, varying her shopping locations, never going to the same place twice. But Theodore Hayes had built his career on noticing patterns and identifying anomalies. Of course, he would notice. It's personal, she said quietly, meeting his gaze. Nothing that affects my work performance. Olivia, Theodore said, his voice softening in a way she had never heard before. In 3 years, you have never taken a sick day, never been late, never asked for special accommodation. You work through lunch most days, stay late without complaint, and handle situations that would overwhelm most people with remarkable grace. You've become indispensable to this company and to me personally. So when I see signs that something might be wrong, I'm not going to ignore it just because it's personal. She felt something break inside her chest, the weight of months of fear and isolation suddenly pressing down with unbearable force. You wouldn't understand. Try me. Olivia looked down at her hands, watching her fingers twist together. There's someone from my past. Someone who doesn't understand that it's over. I've been trying to handle it quietly, trying not to let it affect my professional life. The reason I was at Westside Plaza is because I've been changing where I shop, where I go after work, trying to be unpredictable so he can't follow patterns. The silence that followed was heavy. When Olivia finally looked up, she saw something dangerous flash in Theodore's eyes. How long has this been going on? 6 months. Since shortly before I started working here. Derek, my ex-boyfriend, he didn't take the breakup well. At first, it was just messages, emails I could ignore. But then he started showing up places. My apartment building, my gym, the coffee shop I used to go to every morning. I filed a police report, but they said unless he actually threatened me or violated a restraining order, there was nothing they could do. And I couldn't afford the lawyer fees to get a restraining order on my own. Theodore moved around his desk, pulling out his phone. What's his full name? Mr. Hayes, I really don't think this is necessary. I have it under control. Olivia, nothing about what you just described sounds under control. You're living your life trying to be unpredictable, which means you're living in fear. That's not acceptable. He looked at her with such intensity that she felt something shift in the air between them. What's his full name? Derek Morrison, she whispered. Theodore typed rapidly on his phone, then made a call. Jennifer, I need you to pull everything you can find on a Derek Morrison. Run a full background check, social media analysis, known addresses, employment history, everything. I want it on my desk in 2 hours. He paused, listening. Yes, I know it's unusual. Just do it. Also, get me the name of the best restraining order attorney in the city. Someone who can move quickly. He ended the call and looked at Olivia, who sat frozen in her chair. You're going to give Jennifer every detail you have about this situation. Every incident, every message, every time he's shown up somewhere he shouldn't be. Then we're going to make sure Derek Morrison understands that harassing you comes with consequences he hasn't considered. I can't afford an attorney, Olivia said, her voice barely above a whisper. Sterling Industries has an employee assistance program that covers legal fees for situations exactly like this. And even if it didn't, I would personally make sure you had the representation you need. No one who works for me should have to live in fear. Olivia felt tears prickling at her eyes, but she blinked them back. Why are you doing this? Theodore was quiet for a moment, then he moved to sit in the chair beside her rather than behind his desk. It was a gesture of equality that caught her off guard. 3 years ago, when I was going through my divorce, I was drowning. The company was in the middle of the Meridian acquisition, my personal life was imploding, and I was barely holding it together. Do you remember what you did? Olivia thought back to those chaotic months shortly after she had started working for him. I just did my job. No. You did far more than your job. You anticipated problems before they arose, shielded me from unnecessary distractions, and somehow managed to keep both my professional and personal calendars from completely destroying me. There was one night I was working late, trying to finalize the acquisition documents, and I realized I had missed my son's birthday dinner. I was about to call and make another excuse when you walked in and told me you had already rescheduled it, ordered his favorite cake from that bakery across town, and arranged for a courier to deliver my gift on time. Olivia remembered that night. Theodore had looked so defeated, so overwhelmed, that she had just wanted to help in any way she could. You never asked for recognition, never made it about you. You just quietly made sure I didn't lose the most important relationships in my life while I was fighting to save the company. So if you think I'm going to stand by while someone threatens your safety and peace of mind, you're wrong. This is me returning the favor. Before Olivia could respond, Theodore's phone buzzed with a message. His expression darkened as he read it. Jennifer found something. Derek Morrison was fired from his last job for inappropriate behavior toward a female colleague. There's also a sealed record from 5 years ago, possibly another restraining order from a different woman. Olivia felt cold. I didn't know about any of that. That's because predators like him are good at hiding their patterns until they find someone vulnerable. Theodore stood, his jaw set with determination. This ends now. You're not dealing with this alone anymore. The REVLATO and the attorney's office smelled of leather and expensive cologne. Olivia sat in an oversized chair while Victoria Chen, the restraining order specialist Theodore had hired, reviewed the documentation spread across her mahogany desk. It had been 3 days since the accidental text message, and Olivia's life had transformed into something she barely recognized. This is substantial evidence, Victoria said, looking up from the stack of printed emails and screenshots. The pattern of behavior is clear, and combined with his previous record, we should have no problem getting an emergency protective order by tomorrow afternoon. Olivia nodded, still processing how quickly everything was moving. Theodore had insisted she take the rest of the week off with full pay, had arranged for building security to escort her to and from her apartment, and had personally driven her to this appointment. He sat in the waiting room now, working on his laptop but ready to step in if needed. There's one concern, Victoria continued, her expression growing serious. Men like Derek Morrison don't respond well to legal boundaries. The restraining order is necessary, but it's just paper. It doesn't physically stop him from approaching you. We need to discuss. I'm suggesting you consider changing your routine more dramatically. Perhaps staying with friends or family for a few weeks while this gets sorted out. Maybe even considering relocation if his behavior escalates safety measures beyond the legal framework. A chill ran through Olivia. What are you suggesting? Olivia felt her stomach drop. Relocation meant leaving her job, leaving the life she had built. I don't have family in the area, and I can't ask my friends to put themselves at risk by housing me. Victoria's expression softened. Then we need to make sure your current residence is as secure as possible. Security system, changed locks, awareness of exits and safe rooms. I have contacts who specialize in this kind of protection. When Olivia emerged from the office an hour later, her head was spinning with information about panic buttons, security cameras, and emergency protocols. Theodore looked up from his laptop as she approached, immediately reading the exhaustion in her face. How did it go? She's filing for the emergency order tomorrow. But she also thinks Derek might escalate once he's served with papers. Olivia sank into the chair beside him. This is becoming so much more complicated than I expected. Theodore closed his laptop and turned to face her fully. Complicated doesn't mean we stop. It means we adapt. He paused, seeming to weigh his next words carefully. I have a proposition, and I want you to hear me out before you say no. Olivia looked at him warily. What kind of proposition? My house has a guest suite with a separate entrance. It's secure, gated property with 24-hour security. You could stay there while we sort out the situation with Derek. It would be completely professional, just a safe place until the restraining order is in effect and we know you're out of immediate danger. Mr. Hayes, I can't possibly accept that. It's too much. Theodore, he said quietly. If we're going to be temporarily sharing a property, you should probably call me Theodore. Olivia shook her head. It wouldn't be appropriate. You're my boss. And you're a valued employee who's in a dangerous situation. Olivia, I have the resources to help, and I'm offering them. There's no ulterior motive here, just basic human decency. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she rarely saw from him. My ex-wife used to accuse me of caring more about the company than people. Maybe she was right for a long time. But I'm trying to be better than that. Let me help. Something in his voice made Olivia look at him more closely. Beneath the polished executive exterior, she saw genuine concern mixed with something that looked like old regret. She thought about her small apartment with its flimsy locks, about Derek knowing exactly where she lived, about lying awake every night listening for footsteps in the hallway. Just until the restraining order is in place, she said finally. And I pay rent. Absolutely not. Theodore, if you want me to accept this, I need to maintain some independence. I'll pay whatever the going rate is for a room. He studied her for a moment, then nodded. Fine. $1 per month. That's my final offer. Despite everything, Olivia felt a small smile tug at her lips. You drive a hard bargain. I didn't build a successful operations division by being a pushover. They gathered her belongings from her apartment that evening, accompanied by building security and a police officer Victoria had arranged. Olivia packed quickly, grabbing essentials and trying not to think about how surreal this all felt. As they loaded boxes into Theodore's car, she noticed him watching the street carefully, his body language alert and protective. Theodore's house was in the affluent Riverside district, a modern architectural masterpiece of glass and steel nestled among mature oak trees. The guest suite was larger than Olivia's entire apartment, with its own kitchenette, bathroom, and private entrance as he had promised. The main house is through that door, Theodore said, pointing to a connecting entrance. It stays unlocked from your side so you can access the kitchen and living areas if you need to, but locked from my side to give you complete privacy. Security code for the gate is 8472. There are panic buttons in every room that connect directly to the security company and police. Olivia looked around the beautifully appointed space, feeling overwhelmed. This is too generous. It's practical. You need a safe place, and I have one available. Try to think of it that way. Theodore moved toward the door, then paused. I meant what I said about this being temporary and professional. I know the situation is unusual, but I want you to feel completely comfortable here. Thank you, Theodore. For everything. Theodore's house was in the affluent Riverside district, a modern architectural masterpiece of glass and steel nestled among mature oak trees. The guest suite was larger than Olivia's entire apartment, with its own kitchenette, bathroom, and private entrance as he had promised. The main house is through that door, Theodore said, pointing to a connecting entrance. It stays unlocked from your side so you can access the kitchen and living areas if you need to, but locked from my side to give you complete privacy. Security code for the gate is 8472. There are panic buttons in every room that connect directly to the security company and police. Olivia looked around the beautifully appointed space, feeling overwhelmed. This is too generous. It's practical. You need a safe place, and I have one available. Try to think of it that way. Theodore moved toward the door, then paused. I meant what I said about this being temporary and professional. I know the situation is unusual, but I want you to feel completely comfortable here. Thank you, Theodore. For everything. He nodded and left, the door clicking softly behind him. Olivia sank onto the plush sofa, finally allowing herself to feel the full weight of the past few days. She had gone from hiding her problems to having her boss reorganize his life to help her. It was disorienting and touching in equal measure. The emergency restraining order was granted the next afternoon. Derek was served with papers at his apartment by a process server accompanied by police. According to Victoria, he had reacted with anger but had not made any immediate threats. Still, she cautioned Olivia to remain vigilant. That night, Olivia was working in the guest suite when she heard shouting from outside. Her blood turned to ice as she recognized Derek's voice at the front gate, demanding to speak with her. She hit the panic button with shaking hands and heard the immediate wail of alarms. Theodore burst through the connecting door moments later. Stay here. Security is already handling it. But Olivia followed him to the window, watching as Derek paced outside the gate, his face twisted with rage. You think you can hide from me? You think some rich guy can protect you? This isn't over, Olivia. You're mine, and you always will be. Theodore's expression was cold fury. He pulled out his phone and began recording. Keep talking, Derek. Every word is evidence. Police arrived within minutes, and Derek was arrested for violating the restraining order. As officers led him away in handcuffs, he screamed threats that made Olivia's skin crawl. Theodore stood beside her, his presence solid and reassuring. He's going to jail tonight, Theodore said quietly. And with that performance, Victoria will have no trouble getting the restraining order extended and strengthened. Olivia realized she was trembling. Theodore noticed and gently guided her back inside, away from the windows. It's over for now. You're safe. He knows where I am. He found me even here. He found the property, but he couldn't get past the gate. The security system worked exactly as it should. And now he's facing criminal charges that will keep him away from you. Theodore's voice was calm but firm. This is actually progress, Olivia. I know it doesn't feel like it, but every time he violates the order, the consequences get more severe. They sat in the living room of the main house, Theodore pouring her a glass of water while they waited for Victoria to call with updates. Olivia noticed details she hadn't seen before. Photographs of a teenage boy, clearly Theodore's son, playing soccer and graduating from middle school. Books on the shelves about architecture and philosophy alongside business strategy guides. A well-worn guitar in the corner. I didn't know you played, she said, nodding toward the instrument. Theodore followed her gaze and smiled slightly. I don't anymore. That belonged to my father. He tried to teach me when I was young, but I was too impatient, too focused on other things. By the time I wanted to learn, he was gone. I'm sorry. Me too. It's one of many regrets I'm trying to address. He looked at her directly. My ex-wife was right about me, you know. I did prioritize work over everything else. I missed my son's childhood moments, failed to show up for the people who mattered. Building the company became an excuse to avoid dealing with anything that required emotional vulnerability. Olivia was surprised by the honesty. This was not the Theodore Hayes she knew from the office, the man who commanded boardrooms and negotiated million-dollar deals with perfect composure. What changed? She asked softly. Losing my family changed me. Watching my son grow up through scheduled visitations instead of daily moments changed me. And maybe watching you handle an impossible situation with grace while I had the power to help but almost missed it, that changed me too. He set down his glass. You sent that photograph by accident, but maybe it was supposed to happen. Maybe I needed to see that someone I respect was struggling, that all my resources mean nothing if I don't use them to actually help people. Before Olivia could respond, his phone rang. Victoria's name appeared on the screen. Theodore answered on speaker. Derek Morrison has been formally charged with stalking and violating a restraining order. Given his previous record and tonight's behavior, the judge set bail at $50,000. He's unlikely to make it, which means he'll be in custody for at least a week until the hearing. Relief flooded through Olivia. A week. That's something. It's more than something, Victoria continued. It gives us time to build an airtight case. With Theodore's video and the security footage, plus all the previous documentation, we can push for a long-term restraining order with serious penalties for violation. This man is finally facing real consequences. After the call ended, Olivia felt tears streaming down her face. She had held everything together for so long, maintaining her professional composure, refusing to let Derek's harassment define her. But now, in the safety of Theodore's home with the immediate threat contained, everything came pouring out. Theodore handed her tissues without judgment, letting her cry without trying to fix it with words. When she finally composed herself, he spoke gently. You don't have to be strong all the time, Olivia. That's what I'm learning. Strength isn't about never breaking down. It's about letting people help you when you need it. The RESOLUTO and the courthouse hallway buzzed with quiet conversations and shuffling papers. Olivia sat on a wooden bench beside Theodore, her hands folded tightly in her lap as they waited for Derek's hearing to begin. 2 weeks had passed since his arrest, 2 weeks of relative peace that felt like learning to breathe again after being underwater too long. Victoria approached them with a confident stride, her briefcase swinging at her side. The prosecutor just informed me that Derek's attorney is recommending he accept a plea deal. 6 months in jail, 2 years probation, and a 5-year restraining order with strict conditions. If he violates it even once, he goes back to jail immediately. Olivia felt something release in her chest. He's actually going to jail? The video footage from the gate incident combined with his previous record made this a strong case. His lawyer knows that if this goes to trial, he's looking at potentially more time. The plea deal is his best option, and the prosecutor believes he'll take it. Victoria sat down beside them. This is the outcome we hoped for, Olivia. Real consequences and real protection. When Derek was led into the courtroom an hour later, Olivia barely recognized him. He looked diminished somehow, his swagger replaced with hunched shoulders and downcast eyes. He didn't look at her once during the proceedings, not even when the judge asked if he understood the terms of the plea agreement. Yes, Your Honor, Derek muttered. The judge's voice was stern as she outlined the conditions. Mr. Morrison, you are to have absolutely no contact with Ms. Bennett. No phone calls, no emails, no social media contact, no third-party messages. You are not to come within 500 feet of her residence, her workplace, or any location where you know her to be. You will wear a monitoring device upon your release from jail, and any violation of these terms will result in immediate incarceration. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. I want to be clear about something. Stalking is not romantic persistence. It's criminal harassment that can escalate to violence. You've been given multiple chances to change your behavior, and you've chosen to ignore those chances. This court will not tolerate any further violation of Ms. Bennett's rights and safety. 6 months in jail, followed by 2 years of supervised probation. Court is adjourned. As they left the courthouse, Olivia felt like she was walking through a dream. Theodore's hand rested lightly on her shoulder, a gesture of support that had become familiar over the past 2 weeks. It's really over, she said, stepping into the sunshine. The legal part is, Theodore replied. Now comes the part where you reclaim your life. But reclaiming her life proved more complicated than Olivia expected. The guest suite at Theodore's house had become a comfortable refuge, and the thought of returning to her apartment filled her with anxiety. Even with Derek in jail, the memories of fear lingered in every corner of that space. Theodore noticed her hesitation when Victoria suggested she could move back home. That evening, he found Olivia in the garden behind the main house, staring at the sunset without really seeing it. "Penny, for your thoughts," he said, settling onto the bench beside her. "I was just thinking about how strange it is that I feel safer in your guest house than in my own apartment. Derek never even made it past my building's lobby, but somehow he contaminated the whole space just by existing near it." Theodore nodded slowly. "After my divorce, I sold the family house. Couldn't stand being in all those rooms where my marriage fell apart. Sometimes spaces hold too much emotional weight to be comfortable anymore." "So what did you do?" "Built this place. Started fresh with architecture that reflected who I wanted to become rather than who I had been." He gestured at the modern lines of the house. Every design choice was intentional. Open spaces instead of closed-off rooms. Glass walls to let in light instead of heavy curtains. It was my way of choosing transparency over hiding. Olivia considered this. "I can't afford to build a new house." "No, but you could find a new apartment. A fresh space without any memories attached to Derek." Theodore paused. "Or you could stay here longer. The offer remains open, no pressure, no expectations. People at work are already talking. Jennifer from HR asked me yesterday if there was anything she should know about our working relationship." Theodore's expression darkened. "She had no right to question you about personal matters. She was trying to be diplomatic. But she has a point. How does it look that I'm living in my boss's guest house? Even though nothing inappropriate is happening, the optics are problematic." "Then maybe we need to change the optics," Theodore said quietly. Olivia turned to look at him fully. In the fading light, his features were softer than she'd ever seen them in the office. The past 2 weeks had shifted something between them, transforming their professional relationship into something more complex. They had dinner together most evenings, shared morning coffee while reviewing news, talked about books and music and childhood memories. She had learned that he was afraid of heights despite living in a 2-story house, that he volunteered at a literacy program every Saturday, that his failed marriage still haunted him with regrets about the man he had been. "What do you mean, change the optics?" she asked carefully. Theodore stood and walked to the edge of the garden, his hands in his pockets. "I've been thinking about this a lot, probably more than I should. The truth is, having you here these past 2 weeks has reminded me what it feels like to have someone to come home to. Someone who actually cares about my day beyond what deals I closed or what meetings I attended. My son visits next weekend, and I realized I was excited to introduce you to him, not as my assistant but as someone important in my life." Olivia's heart began beating faster. "Theodore, I know the timing is terrible. I know you've just escaped one dangerous relationship and probably need time to heal. I know I'm your boss and there are power dynamics we'd have to navigate carefully. But I also know that I care about you as more than an employee, and I think maybe you feel something too." She did feel something. That was the terrifying part. Somewhere between the crisis and the safety, between professional boundaries and shared vulnerabilities, her feelings for Theodore had evolved into something she hadn't expected. But the thought of jumping into another relationship so soon after Derek felt reckless. "I know the timing is terrible. I know you've just escaped one dangerous relationship and probably need time to heal. I know I'm your boss and there are power dynamics we'd have to navigate carefully. But I also know that I care about you as more than an employee, and I think maybe you feel something too." She did feel something. That was the terrifying part. Somewhere between the crisis and the safety, between professional boundaries and shared vulnerabilities, her feelings for Theodore had evolved into something she hadn't expected. But the thought of jumping into another relationship so soon after Derek felt reckless. "I need time," she said finally. "I need to figure out who I am when I'm not defined by fear or by my job. I need to stand on my own before I can stand with someone else." Theodore turned to face her, and she saw understanding in his eyes rather than disappointment. "That's fair. That's healthy, actually. Take all the time you need. The guest suite is yours for as long as you want it, no strings attached. And whatever happens or doesn't happen between us personally, your position at Sterling Industries is secure. Those two things are completely separate." Can they be, though? If we work together and live in the same property and have feelings for each other, how do we maintain professional boundaries? Very carefully, Theodore said with a slight smile. And with complete transparency. Starting with me disclosing to HR that you're temporarily staying in my guest house due to a personal safety issue, with appropriate documentation from Victoria. Then we establish clear boundaries around work discussions versus personal time. And we're honest with each other about what we're comfortable with every step of the way. Olivia appreciated his practical approach. It was so quintessentially Theodore, addressing emotional complexity with logical frameworks. "You've really thought this through." "I've had a lot of quiet evenings to think." Turns out when you stop using work as an escape from feelings, you actually have to deal with those feelings. The next morning, Theodore called Jennifer from HR to his office with Olivia present. He explained the situation professionally and completely, providing Victoria's documentation of the stalking case and the security arrangements that had necessitated temporary relocation. Jennifer listened carefully, taking notes. "I appreciate your transparency, Theodore," Jennifer said. "This is exactly the kind of situation the Employee Assistance Program was designed to address. I'll make sure everything is properly documented. Olivia, I apologize if my questions yesterday made you uncomfortable. I should have approached the matter more sensitively." "It's all right," Olivia replied. "You were doing your job." After Jennifer left, Theodore looked at Olivia seriously. "That's step one. Now I think we need to consider your career trajectory at Sterling Industries independent of our personal situation." "What do you mean?" "I mean you've been my executive assistant for 3 years, and you're overqualified for the position. You have a business degree, speak 3 languages, and understand operations better than some of our department heads. It's time we discussed your advancement." Olivia felt caught off guard. "I'm happy in my current role." "Are you, though? Or have you been comfortable staying in a position that doesn't challenge you because it's stable and familiar?" Theodore pulled out a folder from his desk. "I've been reviewing organizational charts. The Director of Strategic Planning position is opening up next quarter when Robert retires. It's a significant promotion, different department, substantial pay increase. You'd be perfect for it. That's your department. We'd still be working together. In meetings, yes. But you'd have your own team, your own projects, your own authority. The power dynamic between us would shift significantly. You'd be a colleague rather than a subordinate." He slid the folder across the desk. "Just think about it. No pressure, no expectations. But I want you to have options, Olivia. I want you to build the career you deserve, regardless of what happens between us personally." Olivia opened the folder, scanning the job description and requirements. It was exactly the kind of challenge she had been craving without admitting it to herself. Strategic planning, cross-departmental collaboration, direct reporting to the executive board. It was terrifying and exhilarating. They talked through dinner about their hopes and boundaries, about how to navigate a relationship while working in the same company, about introducing the relationship gradually to colleagues to avoid shocking anyone. It was the most unromantic romantic conversation Olivia had ever had, full of practical considerations and careful planning. It was also perfect, because it was authentically them. 6 months later, Olivia stood in Theodore's living room, now comfortable referring to it as their living room. She had kept her apartment but spent most evenings here, cooking dinner with Theodore, helping Justin with homework, building something that felt remarkably like family. The restraining order against Derek had been extended for 5 years after he violated probation by attempting to create a fake social media account to contact her. He was back in jail serving additional time, and Olivia had finally stopped checking over her shoulder everywhere she went. Her role as director of strategic planning had exceeded everyone's expectations. She had implemented efficiency protocols that saved the company millions and had been asked to present at an industry conference next month. Theodore attended her presentations when he could, sitting in the audience with obvious pride, their personal and professional lives existing in careful balance. "I never thanked you properly," Olivia said one evening as they cleaned up after dinner. "For everything you did when I sent that accidental text message." Theodore paused in loading the dishwasher. "You thank me all the time." "No, I mean for seeing past the mistake to the problem underneath. For caring enough to investigate. For using your resources to help instead of just offering empty sympathy. You changed my life that day." He dried his hands and turned to face her fully. "You changed mine too. That photograph was supposed to go to your friend, but maybe it was meant to come to me. Maybe I needed to see that all my success meant nothing if I couldn't help someone who mattered. You reminded me how to be human again, Olivia. How to care about something beyond quarterly reports and profit margins." She moved into his arms, resting her head against his chest. "We saved each other, then. We did. And we keep saving each other every day. That's what partnership looks like." Through the window, Olivia could see the garden where they'd had their first honest conversation about feelings. The space where everything had started to shift from professional to personal, from fear to safety, from isolation to connection. That accidental text message had seemed like a disaster in the moment, a humiliating mistake that could have derailed her career. Instead, it had led her here. To safety, to love, to a version of herself she hadn't known was possible. Sometimes the worst mistakes turned out to be the best accidents, opening doors to futures you never imagined. Her phone buzzed with a message from Rachel, her best friend who the original photograph had been meant for. "Rachel, just saw your promotion announcement on LinkedIn. So proud of you. Also, when do I get to officially meet this boyfriend you keep mentioning? Need to make sure he's good enough for you." Olivia smiled and typed back, "Soon. And trust me, he is. He really, really is." She looked up at Theodore, who was watching her with warmth in his eyes, and knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The journey from that panicked moment in a department store dressing room to this peaceful evening had been terrifying and transformative. But she wouldn't change any of it. Because sometimes the universe sends you exactly what you need disguised as a mistake. And sometimes the person who shows up to help becomes the person you want to build a life with. And sometimes, against all odds and despite every complication, things work out exactly as they should. Theodore pulled her close, and Olivia closed her eyes, breathing in the moment. Safe, loved, and finally free to build the future she deserved. Over the following weeks, things shifted gradually. Olivia found a new apartment in a secure building with a doorman and modern security systems. Theodore helped her move, along with his son Justin, a thoughtful 15-year-old who immediately bonded with Olivia over their shared love of classic literature. "Dad's been different lately," Justin said while unpacking books. "Happier, I think. More present. He actually remembered to ask about my science project last week without me having to remind him 3 times. Olivia smiled. "Your dad is working on being more present in general. Is that because of you?" The direct question caught her off guard. "Partly, maybe. But mostly because he wants to be a better father to you." Justin considered this, then grinned. "Well, whatever the reason, I like it. And I like you, for the record. Just in case that matters." "It matters," Olivia said softly. She interviewed for the strategic planning position with the executive board, presenting a comprehensive analysis of operational efficiency improvements that impressed even the most skeptical board members. Theodore recused himself from the interview process entirely to avoid any appearance of favoritism. When she was offered the position 2 weeks later, the joy she felt was entirely her own achievement. Her first day in the new role, Olivia arrived early to find a small package on her desk. Inside was a leather portfolio embossed with her initials and a handwritten note from Theodore. "Congratulations on your new beginning. You earned this through talent and hard work, not because of our friendship or anything else. I'm proud to work alongside you as a colleague. Looking forward to seeing what you accomplish next. Also, dinner Friday if you're interested. No pressure, just two colleagues who happen to enjoy each other's company. Think about it." Olivia smiled, running her fingers over the smooth leather. She had spent the past month establishing herself in her new apartment, building confidence in her independence, reconnecting with friends she had isolated herself from during the worst of Derek's harassment. She had started therapy to process the trauma and to understand why she had ignored red flags in her relationship with Derek. She was learning to trust her own judgment again, to recognize the difference between healthy attention and controlling behavior. And Theodore had given her space for all of it. They texted occasionally, shared coffee in the break room when their schedules aligned, attended the same company meetings as professional equals. But he never pushed, never demanded more than she was ready to give. Friday evening, Olivia met Theodore at a small Italian restaurant neither of them had been to before. A neutral space, a fresh start. He stood when she arrived, and she noticed he looked nervous in a way she had never seen him in boardrooms or negotiations. "You came," he said, relief evident in his voice. "I almost didn't," Olivia admitted, settling into her chair. "Not because I didn't want to, but because I wanted to be sure I was coming for the right reasons. Not because I felt obligated or because old power dynamics were influencing my decision." "And what did you decide?" "I decided that you're worth the risk of trying. We're worth the risk." She met his eyes directly. "I've spent 3 months learning to trust myself again, learning to recognize healthy relationships from unhealthy ones. And everything about how you've handled this situation has shown me who you really are. Patient, respectful, willing to put my needs ahead of your wants. That's not nothing, Theodore." He reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hand, giving her the choice to close the final distance. She did, her fingers intertwining with his. "I can't promise I won't make mistakes," Theodore said quietly. "I'm still learning how to balance ambition with presence, success with connection. But I can promise I'll try. I can promise transparency and honesty and genuine partnership. That's all I need. Honest effort and mutual respect. Everything else we can figure out together."